Around the 1940s, the time when machines were first being programmed, women used to do a lot of the programming. However, their jobs were considered inferior. The males would create these machines, and all the women had to do was code them. Sounds simple, right? However, these jobs proved more difficult than they were perceived to be. The men thought that all the hard work in this field was creating the actual machines, and that coding the machine did not require much intellect. So they tossed aside the job to women. Turns out you have to have a mathematically intelligent mind to understand how to work the machine and how to translate human language into machine language. Because of this, the number of women in the workforce was high, and it only continued to go up from there. Computer science was the fastest growing major for women around the 1970s to the 80s, and during this golden time, women were a prominent part of the workforce. Around 30 to 50% of all programmers in this field were women. In the spring of 1967, Cosmopolitan magazine put on an article entitled "The Computer Girls." This article highlighted how the girls in computer science were trendy and even encouraged them to participate in this field, as you could achieve the aesthetic of becoming a computer girl. So, why is there such a gender disparity gap if there once was an opportunity to achieve full equality in the industry? Many factors affected this, but the biggest has to do with the narrative shift that occurred. Recall how women were encouraged during the 1970s and 80s to work in the field of computer science because of articles such as the Computer Girls. However, now that it has been revealed that programming is no easy feat, computer science is an area that more men were being represented in, and it was not only considered to be a job that carried more prestige, but also they found out it required an intellectually competent mind. And of course, how could a woman fit that description? Furthermore, to discourage women from the industry to make it more male-dominant, more education requirements were needed for entering the field, which at the time was not readily available for women. When looking at the brain, there are no innate differences between the two genders that makes them different in potential. So why do we find that more often than not, males have more coding ability than females? That must come from the brain, right? It does come from the brain, but not because there are innate differences, but rather because another reason that powerfully influences the brain, experiences. From the beginning, boys are encouraged to take apart computers and pursue math and sciences, whereas girls are taught to take up less space and learn how to be more empathetic, kind-hearted, qualities that make a good wife. Now, let's fast forward to college. We now find ourselves in a situation where the men would have had around 18 years of the brain being trained by experiences, and virtually none for the women. Furthermore, the amount of computer science courses offered in high schools are limited to only around 10% of high schools in the US. On top of that, 25 states do not give credit for these courses. Coupled with the fact that boys are more encouraged to go into STEM-related fields, the number of women pursuing computer science is bound to be small. I know I'm speaking to a room full of Vikings, and how could we not mention Mr. Ansari and Village's Girls of Computer Science? As we at Village work to change the expected face of computer scientists, you might underestimate the amount of female graduates who have felt empowered to pursue a STEM career upon graduation. But the truth is, despite my privileged life and attending multiple international schools, only now have I had the opportunity to take a computer science course. Another main factor that discourages women from entering the field of computer science is the stereotype that surrounds computer hackers. Recall earlier how the narrative shifted from the 80s to favor more men in the field. This narrative also brought forth this new culture that enveloped the field and what computer scientists look like. When you think of computer hackers, many, and I'm looking at you mainly, millennials, you may envision someone who's in their parents' basement, drinks a lot of caffeinated beverages, eats a lot of sugar, codes till like 3 a.m. in the morning, and not caring what their appearance looks like, and overall very antisocial. Over time, this culture has continually had an effect on discouraging women from not engaging with this particular field, as it creates an environment that made women uncomfortable. So now focusing on why we need women in STEM, it's not simply that we need the diversity for the sake of diversity, but rather that there's a reason why women in tech are so important to have. Diversity is crucial for innovation, and if you want your product to have a positive impact on all users, you have to have diversity. When the first airbags were implemented, there were a lot of casualties, especially around women and children. Now, why do you think that happened? How could an airbag be prejudiced against women and children? How about we start by taking a look at who designed it? The answer? Middle-aged white men. Big surprise there. Now, because they lack diversity in their team, they only made the specs to surround the middle-aged white men and failed to take into consideration the frames of women and young children. So now that we know about this gender disparity in computer science, what now? Well, to encourage women to get into the pipeline, we need to increase everyone's interest in computer science by introducing it to everyone, regardless of gender, race, or any other factor, at a young age. By increasing interest equally across the board, we will inevitably get more people into the pipeline, thus increasing diversity. Countries such as New Zealand, South Korea, the UK, India, China, Nigeria, and many more are all ahead of us in terms of bringing computer science to children's lives. And I think this is one of those times where we, as a nation, can learn from other countries to get ourselves to a point where we also encourage all of our children to pursue computer science. Thank you.